It's ancient Israel, around 1200 BC. Women couldn't own property, couldn't testify in court, and certainly couldn't lead armies. Yet somewhere in the hill country of Ephraim, beneath the shade of a palm tree, sits the most powerful person in all of Israel. And yes, she's a woman. Her name is Deborah, and kings literally come to her for wisdom. But here's the kicker. She's about to do something so audacious, so impossible by the standards of her time, that it will echo through history for over 3,000 years. When God rewrites the playbook. You know, we live in an age where we're constantly debating leadership styles, glass ceilings, and what it means to lead with both strength and wisdom. Well, let me introduce you to someone who figured that out about 3 millennia before we started having these conversations. Deborah wasn't just breaking barriers, she was obliterating them, all while staying completely aligned with God's will. But here's what I love about Deborah's story. It's not really about her gender, her politics, or even her military victories. It's about what happens when someone, anyone, chooses to trust God completely, even when the circumstances seem impossible. And friends, if you've ever felt called to step into something bigger than yourself, if you've ever wondered whether God can use you despite what others might say about your limitations, then Deborah's story is about to set your heart on fire. Israel's Wild West era. But first, let's paint the picture. We're in the period of the Judges. Think of it as Israel's Wild West era. No king, no central government, just 12 tribes trying to figure out how to live together in the Promised Land. And honestly, they weren't doing a great job. The pattern was depressingly predictable. Israel would turn away from God, enemy nations would oppress them, they'd cry out for help, God would raise up a deliverer, a judge, and then rinse and repeat. It's like watching someone touch a hot stove over and over again. You want to shake them and say, haven't we learned this lesson already? Enter the Canaanites under King Jabin and his military commander, Sisera. For 20 brutal years, they've been crushing Israel under their iron fists, literally. These guys had 900 iron chariots, which in ancient warfare was like showing up to a sword fight with tanks. The Israelites were outgunned, outmanned, and utterly demoralized. Now, in this male-dominated society, leadership was typically passed from father to son. Women had about as much chance of leading a nation as a shepherd boy had of becoming king, which, come to think of it, also happened in Israel. But that's David's story for another day. Yet here comes Deborah, described as both a prophetess and a judge, holding court under her palm tree, and people are coming from miles around seeking her wisdom. The palm tree that changed history. Can you imagine the scene? Picture Deborah sitting beneath that palm tree, which, by the way, became so famous it was literally called the Palm of Deborah. People would give directions like, oh, you need wisdom? Just head to Deborah's tree. It's like having your own personal landmark. But Deborah wasn't content to just settle disputes about stolen goats and property lines. She had a direct line to the Almighty, and one day, God gave her a message that would change everything. She calls for Barak, a military commander from the tribe of Naphtali. Now, I love this next part because it shows us so much about both characters. Deborah tells Barak, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men, and lead them out to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. Pretty clear instructions, right? God's basically saying, here's your battle plan, here's your victory guarantee. Go get him, tiger. But here's where it gets interesting. Barak looks at this woman, this prophetess who's never led an army, and says, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Now, some people read this and think Barak was being cowardly. But I think there's something deeper here. Barak recognized that Deborah had something he didn't, a direct connection to God's voice. He wasn't being weak, he was being wise. He knew that in spiritual warfare, you want the person with the clearest communication line to headquarters right there beside you. Availability over ability. And here's where Deborah's response reveals her incredible character. She doesn't lecture him about faith or make him feel small. Instead, she simply says, certainly I will go with you. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. Friends, this isn't Deborah being vindictive or feminist. This is prophecy. She's simply declaring what God has already shown her. And notice something beautiful here. She doesn't hesitate to go. She doesn't say, well, I'm a judge, not a general, or that's not in my job description. When God calls, she answers. When her people need her, she steps up. This teaches us something profound about leadership. True biblical leadership isn't about position or power. It's about availability and obedience. Deborah led not because she grabbed for authority, but because she was available when God needed someone to step into his plan. And can we talk about her courage for a moment? She's about to march into battle against 900 iron chariots. In terms of ancient warfare, this is David and Goliath times 900. But Deborah knows something that changes everything. When God is for you, it doesn't matter what's against you. When God floods the battlefield. So off they go. Deborah, Barak, and 10,000 men, marching toward what looks like certain death. But here's the thing about God. He specializes in impossible situations. Just when Sisera thinks he has them trapped, God intervenes in the most unexpected way. A flash flood. The Kishon River, normally a gentle stream, becomes a raging torrent. Those 900 iron chariots, their greatest advantage, suddenly become death traps, bogged down in the mud. The mighty Canaanite army is thrown into chaos, and Sisera himself has to abandon his chariot and flee on foot. And just as Deborah prophesied, it's a woman, Jael, a Bedouin woman, who delivers the final blow to Israel's enemy. The victory belongs entirely to God, carried out through the hands of women who trusted him completely. But here's what I find most beautiful about this story. After the victory, Deborah and Barak sing together. Chapter 5 of Judges records their victory song, and it's one of the oldest pieces of Hebrew poetry we have. Listen to how it begins. When the princes in Israel take the lead, when the people willingly offer themselves, praise the Lord. This wasn't about personal glory. This was about recognizing that when God's people unite under his leadership, impossible things become inevitable. 3 truths that will change your life. So what does Deborah's story mean for us today? Let me share 3 life-changing truths. First, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Deborah had no military training, no formal education in warfare strategy. What she had was a heart tuned to God's voice and the courage to act on what she heard. Maybe you're facing something that feels way beyond your abilities. Good news. God specializes in using ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Your limitations are not God's limitations. Second, leadership is about influence, not title. Deborah led from a palm tree, not a palace. She influenced through wisdom, not wealth. In our Instagram-obsessed, platform-driven world, we often think impact requires a massive stage, but sometimes the most powerful leadership happens in quiet conversations, faithful service, and consistent character. Where is your palm tree? That place where God has positioned you to influence others. Third, when God gives you a word, act on it boldly. Deborah didn't second-guess the message or form a committee to study it. She heard from God and moved. How many of us miss our moments because we're waiting for more confirmation, more credentials, or more comfort? Sometimes obedience requires us to move before we feel ready. You know what strikes me most about Deborah? She never seemed surprised by her success. It's like she knew something the rest of us are still learning. When you align yourself with God's purposes, victory isn't just possible, it's promised. Your palm tree moment. Maybe you're watching this and thinking, that's great for Deborah, but I'm dealing with impossible circumstances too, and I don't see any palm trees or prophecies in my life. Can I encourage you? God is still in the business of raising up unlikely leaders for impossible situations. That difficult situation at work, that struggling relationship, that dream that feels too big for your resources. What if God wants to use you, right where you are, with exactly what you have, to bring his breakthrough? Deborah's story reminds us that God's power is made perfect in our weakness. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out. He just needs you to be available, faithful, and willing to trust his voice over the world's limitations. The same God who gave Deborah wisdom under that palm tree wants to give you wisdom in your living room, your office, your kitchen. The same God who turned the tide of an impossible battle wants to turn the tide in your impossible circumstances. The landmark your life is creating. Here's the beautiful truth about Deborah's story. It's not really about her. It's about a God who uses willing hearts to accomplish his purposes. Deborah just said yes when others said no. She stepped up when others stepped back. She believed God's promises when circumstances screamed otherwise. And you know what? The palm tree where Deborah held court became a landmark for generations. People would point to it, tell stories of the woman who trusted God so completely that he used her to save a nation. What landmark is your life creating? What story is your faithfulness writing for the next generation? Friends, God is still looking for Deborahs, people who will listen for his voice, step into his calling, and trust his heart even when they can't see his plan. The question isn't whether you're qualified. The question is, are you available? Join the Deborah generation. If Deborah's story stirred something in your heart today, I'd love for you to hit that like button and let me know in the comments what spoke to you most. Was it her courage, her wisdom, or maybe that reminder that God equips the called? And hey, if this encouraged you, imagine what it might do for someone else who needs to hear that God can use them too. Share this video with a friend who needs a Deborah reminder today. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of people who want to navigate life God's way, and I'd love to have you as part of this family. Until next time, remember, you serve a God who specializes in impossible situations and ordinary people. Just like Deborah, your yes could change everything. Go be faithful. Go be available. Go change the world.